Senator Dan Coats is a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee and former U.S. ambassador to Germany. He's a Republican from Indiana. Senator Coats, thanks for joining us. First, Senator, I want to get your reaction to this announcement by the White House this morning announcing the targeting of certain individuals for sanctions. Does this go far enough for you?
Well, it's a baby step in the right direction, but given the fact that the United States is viewed as retreating, declining, president who's viewed as weak on foreign policy, very indecisive. We need to do a lot more than this, I think, to get this bully that is in the playground stood up to by the United States and provide the leadership with Europe and our allies to show that we really mean business here. You can't just trample on your neighbor just because you think we can't do anything about it. Economic sanctions need to be strong, they need to be wide. I mean, just naming a few individuals is a small start. I've listed a number of options for the president, and I think, frankly, we should work together with the president as a united body so that we have a unified message to tell the Russians we're not going to tolerate this.
Senator, as you know, the U.S. has about $40 billion a year in trade with Russia. It's much bigger, about 10 times bigger in Europe. And in order for these sanctions to really hurt, the U.S. really needs the Europeans to be involved. But there seems to be great reluctance, especially on the part of our allies, of U.S. allies in the U.K., in Germany. What do you think the Obama administration or you in Congress can do to get Germans and Brits and others in the EU more involved and more willing to impose sanctions?
Well, I think remind Europe that small things that have happened in the past have led to tragic consequences in Europe. And it's important to have stability there and important to have confidence and strength to stand up to these bully tactics of Russia. Secondly, I think we need to do some things to reassure Europe that given the surplus of energy supplies now around the world, whether it's from Norway, whether it's from the United States and other places, Europe does not have to be so dependent on Russian energy, and therefore ought to have a little more freedom to stand up and tell Putin that this is not something that's acceptable, and they're not simply going to kowtow because it affects their economy. We want to avoid anything translating into something much larger, which we've seen historically happen in Europe, and to protect both the United States and the world from that kind of occurrence.
Senator Coats, what kind of support are you getting for your resolution, and do you think it has any chance of passing anytime soon?
Well, some resolution needs to pass. I've introduced one. I have strong support for it. There are others coming forward also from other members. I think Senator Durbin introduced something yesterday. We all need to get on board on this. I mean, this is something that affects the United States. We shouldn't play politics, but we do need leadership from our president, which has been, as I said, weak and indecisive in the past. This is his opportunity to step up, I think, and reassert that leadership which the world so desperately needs. It won't happen without the U.S. leading.
The World Cup soccer matches in Russia that you propose be moved, those are 4 years from now. Yeah. Doesn't that seem, perhaps, to play devil's advocate here, a little far away to be moving them?
Well, obviously most of what I propose is much tougher than that. But you know, this is symbolic from the standpoint that these are going to be in Sochi. Vladimir Putin goes down to Sochi and says, you know, hey, this is the new Russia, as he showed in the Olympics. Whether it's the G8 meeting or whether it's the FIFA World Cup 4 years from now, we need to destroy this narrative that Russia is this nice guy playing with the world, cooperating with everyone, and just come to Sochi and you'll see how different things are. Well, that has all been trumped by this invasion of their neighbor and the lies that have come forward in terms of why they did it and so forth. So it's symbolic, so that's one of many measures which I've offered, but it's the economic sanctions that will really hit home with the Russians.
You said that Putin has imperial ambitions, and you said that could come to threaten us all. What do you mean exactly by that, threatening us all? How is Putin a direct threat to the United States?
Well, I would say it's an indirect threat at this particular point, although this first step is something that we ought to put in the context of history. When the Soviet Union came unglued, it was thought that, you know, they're not going to be a major world player. Putin has put himself in the place of saying, no, I want to restore Russia to its former position. And by doing these steps here in terms of enlarging Russia and saying, well, anybody who was part of our Soviet Union before that thinks that they want to be with Russia, does this not remind us of what happened with Hitler in the early 20s and 30s when they said taking the Sudetenland? I mean, these are Germans, so we're going to incorporate them regardless of what international law says. And this is the first step for Putin. I don't know if he has designs on moving forward, but I can tell you this, the Baltics are nervous, Poland is nervous, Romania and other nations that have been on the fringe of the Soviet Union, found their democracy, found their liberty, are now nervous. And so I think we need to step up now and stop this before it might lead to something down the future that we would regret not having stood up when it happened at the first time.
Senator, before you go, with the benefit of hindsight, is it problematic? Do you wish that George W. Bush had done more to retaliate against Russia when they invaded Georgia in 2008? In retrospect, should the U.S. have made a bigger deal out of that?
I think taking a strong stand in terms of international law being violated and someone violating another nation's sovereignty, whether it's Republican, whether it's a Democrat, doesn't matter. The United States needs to stand strong and needs to lead. It needs to lead its European allies and its friends around the world in condemnation of this and taking whatever steps are necessary to say, don't go there, and we won't let you go there.
Senator Dan Coats, Republican of Indiana, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you. Good talking to you.